We're all pros.
Yeah,
we can handle
no,
it.
I was just, my hearing, all the hits I took to the side of the head. But yeah, that was the first thing I noticed was you either hit the gym real hard and you got big and strong.
Look at that.
Which I can't peg what gym you probably belong to. But
I got one in my building has a gym in it. I just choose not to use it.
And you either went down when you came down for the NCAA tournament down in Clearwater. I figured you were sitting at Hooters for 18 hours straight.
By the way, do you remember the day
joking.
we watched that game? I got in a fight that night, and I was all beat up and cut up from the guy, and I threw the ice cream cone.
You beat him. You beat him with an ice cream cone.
That's right.
I mean, he tried to. I apologize for that. That shouldn't happen down there. But
exactly.
When you're getting ice cream at 4 a.m, sometimes those things happen.
2 a.m. So. Anthony, by the way, of course, first-round pick of the New York Jets, played with Tampa, Kansas City, St. Louis. Am I forgetting any?
Last Chiefs.
Kansas
Bucks.
City, right.
Yeah, what do you got? Jets, I don't know.
So what I want to pick your brain on for to start this is this day for you. Now, we went to school together, so at that time, I watched you play every game you ever played in college. To say, like, you were going to be a first-round pick, when did that kind of start happening? Because there was a lot of Bubba Franks was in that draft. That was a good tight end draft.
I'd say after my junior season, I kind of got in the magazines. I'd say coming out into the college year, me and Bubba Franks were like 1, 2, depending on who you talk to. After my senior year, went well for me personally, not for the team obviously, but then I went. The process helped me. I went to the Senior Bowl, had an outstanding week there. All of a sudden, they start talking about me getting higher in the top of the second. Then I went to the Combine, took care of business there. So I just started checking boxes. And then finally my pro day, where ultimately all the teams were there watching me. And, everybody was saying, okay, you're going to be in the first round. Then I started taking visits. And at that point, it was either going to be the Packers or the Jets. I kind of knew those were the two teams that were going to take tight ends.
And they both did.
And they did. So, Bubba went early. And then I just wasn't sure what pick I was going to go with the Jets because there was 4 first-round picks. And I was the last of the 4 first at 27. But I'll tell you, it was great. It was funny because the unique story I tell it every year. I'm going to tell the abridged version, but everybody gets the call on draft day. You see the guys on their cell phones, the ring, the house phone. They're getting a call before the commissioner comes up and makes the pick. I didn't get that. So as I'm sitting in a tented, not as big as this, but a tented party in Delaware County with my family and friends, Tagliabue's walking up to the stage, and I'm thinking, man, I'm not going to be in the first round. Where am I going to go? I'm looking at the list of teams who's picking. None of them need tight ends. He goes up, announces my name. It's a loud cheer in the tent. It was crazy because we all heard it. We all knew the same time. And then the phone rings, and my agent and Parcells are on there. I was like, how'd you like that? I was like, kind of unique. I wish I would have had a heads up, but it was pretty unique experience.
What was you mentioned Parcells. So you're a rookie, your first-round pick. The eye-opening experience that some of these kids are about to notice that you went from Don Nealon to Parcells. I would assume that was different.
A bit, yeah. and I'll tell you, I don't know if a lot of these guys. There's a lot of players coaches in the league now, so it's not like outside of maybe Belichick, and I don't even know who else to put in that. Coughlin in a sense, being that he looks like he's going to be doing a lot of stuff behind the scenes, but. It was a unique experience. It was humbling. He kind of made you forget about, the diva-ness of being a first-round pick. And, he was real nice to me before the draft. But once I got picked, he was just it was that negative reinforcement. He was kind of chipping away at me. And it built me. It became me a little more of a blue-collar guy. And it was a great experience, just being around him for that year and being a part of that kind of molded me for my career. But these guys, I'm telling you, it's a different league. Not a lot of veterans anymore. It's a little more of embracing from the organizations, especially a first-round guy, because, then Parcells was trying to pick me apart. He was the GM. I was a first-round guy. Now you got GMs that don't want to go and coddle guys. They don't want to say those things to those guys because they don't want to hurt their feelings, make them play bad, because that's their pick.
Right.
So their job depends on catering.
So back then,
so it's a little different.
You see Parcells coming one way, you're veering the other way.
Always. I was scared of the guy. I mean, I'll be honest with you. I want to actually thank him. I haven't seen him in a while, and I probably have flashbacks if I saw him again now, which it wouldn't even mean anything. But it was just a unique experience, a different time, and I'm just glad I was part of that. And, there are some places that you still get that, some of those winning organizations that have things in place. But, again, it's it's a lot of it is on the players to kind of develop themselves, being that they just don't have a lot of time to improve themselves. So that's the number one thing when you look at these guys coming out is, can they get better quickly as this process goes on with OTAs, training camp, and then obviously the season.
Anthony Becht with us, was a first-round pick of the Jets, WVU. Now he's doing college football work for ESPN. So you get a chance to call a lot of the games. You started doing a lot of those Temple, American Conference games. So there's a guy from Temple that could be a first-round pick potentially, but I'm sure there's a lot of guys that you've seen throughout. So just kind of give us a little overview of guys that you particularly – I saw you tweeting out yesterday your top 5 at each spot, but if you have just guys that stand out to Anthony Becht that you want to keep your eye on if you're listening out there.
Well, I guess, I'll start at the tight end position. I mean, for me, O.J. Howard is in a atmosphere, I guess, a sphere better than any other guy, in my opinion. I think he's going to be the best as far as coming in, being that guy now. They all have their issues in the blocking department, but, as far as speed, size, matchup issues, and he's just a hard worker. I mean, if you ask Nick Saban who his favorite player was in the team, it'd be O.J. Howard. So, which is, it's going to bode him well at the next level. And then after that, it's kind of, I say a crapshoot. Do you go off pure athletic talent with a guy like Njoku? Or, Jake Butt, who's going to be banged up early, coming off an ACL. There's a lot of depth, but at the same time, all those guys have some flaws. People want to talk about Ingram. How does he fit in? I don't really even count him as a tight end because he's like a hybrid slot guy. So, it's a deep position. Running backs is obviously going to be an intriguing story tonight.
Yeah, big time.
Where's Fournette going to go? Where's McCaffrey going to go? Where's Dalvin Cook going to go? I mean, here's a guy that I would say is the best guy out of all of them, but yet you hear sources talking about he's going to bounce out of the first round. But I can't imagine that. And if teams are doing their homework and going off the film and they got a good vibe, I think he's going to go earlier than people think.
14 is where the Eagles are. I know you being a Philly guy, you probably keep your ear to them a little bit, but obviously you're doing pre and post stuff for the. How about Cook to Tampa? Is that I know they got a lot of backs down there.
I would not be surprised if Tampa trades down out of that position. I just think that there's a great group of players in the first, 60 spots where they can really, make some hay. For Cleveland, they got all those picks. I mean, hopefully they get themselves. They could probably draft a team with the picks they got early on. But I would say they drafted. If Cook is there, it's somebody you seriously think about, especially the fact you have Jameis in place. Those two guys would be. Jameis would hold him accountable for sure, which is something you really would like about him.
Have you seen Corey Davis play in person?
I have not seen him in person, but I'll tell you, he's the cleanest receiver coming out of this draft as far as route running, outstanding hands. Everybody's questioned his speed, and he really hasn't run because he had the injury during the combine and the personal workouts and stuff. But everything on tape kind of matches up that he's going to be a very productive guy in the league. I think Mike Williams, obviously, you talk about range and getting yourself in a place where you can help a quarterback and put the ball wherever you want and let him go get it. He's a guy that you can lean on for sure. And then Zay Jones from East Carolina, sometimes we don't talk about guys outside of the first-round guys. I think he's a very polished receiver who can make a lot of plays. He's going to help a team, and I got him up there ranked pretty high in my wide receivers top 5.
So we know corner has been lauded as this deep corner class, and then Sidney gets hurt, and now Garyon Conley's got some stuff hanging over his head just a couple of days before the draft. Is there? I mean, the depth pool, the talent pool has shrunk, but still a lot of guys you like at corner.
There is. I mean, I think that the Eagles, if things work out the way they do, that cornerback is a position I would take. The guy that I really like that I think could be there in that area is Humphreys from Alabama. He's got great length. People talk about he doesn't have good ball skills. He's a big, strong, physical corner that can play man-to-man and be, and attack guys in this league. That's what you want to do when you're talking about matchups in the NFC East. I met Adoree Jackson last night. I was shocked. I did not know much about him because you talk about Budda Baker, Sidney Jones, but Kevin King.
Huge.
Eye to eye to me. I couldn't believe it. I almost felt like, was he wearing heels or aquarium shoes or something? I mean, he was looking right at him. I was like, are you Kevin King from Wisconsin? He's like, yeah, that's me. The guy is huge. If he can play as good as some of these corners, some of the things they're talking about, he had a good 40 time. I mean, that's one heck of a matchup on the outside. I think he's rising with a lot of these guys that are getting in the mix. But it's very deep. West Virginia, Rasul Douglas has got a guy that I think he's bottom first round worthy. He's going to go high second. I think he's a guy 6'1". He's got, he's very physical. He'll fight you at the line of scrimmage, man-to-man stuff. Those are NFL qualities that, teams are looking for.
It's funny because the Eagles with Wentz, they pivoted last year. Okay, we went for that. We made the bold move last year. So if you're in their war room, do you say, I got to get Carson something? I got to get him a new toy, a John Ross, a Cook, a McCaffrey. I don't care. We already have Zach Ertz. I'm going to add O.J. Howard to the mix. Do you go toy for Wentz, or is this team just so deficient defensively and they already got Alshon and they got Torrey in the offseason, so do you have to go defense, or do you think getting him a toy is paramount?
I think there's plenty of toys out there to get after the first round. I think everybody's kind of like, the first round's the only place to get players. Let's be honest. A lot of the stars in the NFL were not first-round draft picks. They were the rest of the draft. So it's going to be important for Howie and those guys to really put a plan together and bring in guys where, the good GMs, the good teams find starters in the second, third, and fourth round. That's what you're paid the dollars at that position to do. I think it should be defense. I think there's plenty of guys out there that they can get later that they can put on the field right now and help them.
Yeah, that's the running back question. Is like in the last couple of years, it seems like it's been devalued, and then Ezekiel comes in and has a huge year. Yeah. Taking a running back in the first round, but there's guys you probably get in the third and fourth round that give you the versatility and the value that I don't want to say they're going to be better than Fournette or McCaffrey or Cook, but you're not going to be disappointed.
Yeah, there's no question. Versatility obviously is something McCaffrey gives you. Just as much as he might get 10 touches in the backfield, he also can, get a quick catch and make it a 10, 12-yard gain, which is just as good. So, Leonard Fournette is a guy that I really like. If he was coming out of the draft like 15 years ago when I was coming out, I'd take him with the number one pick.
Right.
Because a lot of teams were doing that. People say he's more athletic, Eddie George kind of style. Well, what teams are really running that kind of offense? Where would he fit? Patriots would be a place he would fit. They like to run the ball quite a bit, but
anybody who gets picked there fits with them.
Yeah, he's not. Yeah, they actually don't want first-round picks. They would rather. They probably look at you when you get drafted in the first round in New England. They kind of don't look at you because their stars are all made later on in the draft. But but a guy like Fournette, is he going to get enough carries to be productive the way you want him to be without having to pass the ball as many times as the teams do in this league? It's a passing league right now. That's why I was kind of scratching my head when I saw AP go to New Orleans because, for me, I don't see the fit. I don't see where you're going to get the production out of him. But, if that's all he had and he felt good about it, then, more power to him.
Anthony Becht with us, an 11-year career in the NFL. And, of course, we see Ron Jaworski a lot down in our neck of the woods. We saw him earlier today out in front of the stage. One of his favorite lines, Anthony, is always the average NFL career when I broke into the NFL is 3.5 years. And now, multiple years later, he doesn't like to say how many, is 3.5 years. So that leads me to leave, durability of athletes. And is there a riskier or safer pick when you're going for a guy like a John Ross who really fast but has hamstring issues, or you look at the defensive back who wouldn't have slid that long, Sidney, right? He would have slid that far if he didn't have health issues, but do you still take a guy like that? How do you view, as a guy that was in this experience, those risk picks?
And that Achilles is a tough one.
Yeah, that's an explosive position he plays. The guys that are obviously getting pushed down because of injuries, I think you're going to have to take them where you deem that you're not going to get something out of them now, but yet there's still value. So is a high third-round pick worth it to you to do that? Probably, yeah. I'd hate to see a guy who's a first-round pick slip that far, but it just happens. If you're injured, you're injured. And plus, even though there's a high success rate of coming back from a lot of these injuries now, you never know how bodies react to those things. Now, the other guys that – the domestic violence charges and stuff like those guys I'm not even dealing with. Look, Joe Mixon, from a football standpoint, is an exceptional player. But as a GM, if I'm a GM, he's not on my board. I don't want him on my team. I can find other backs to do what he does to make me a better team. Someone's going to take a chance on him. Is it going to be the first round? I can't imagine. And with some of these other players, with some of this Brantley from Florida, he had a recent thing. And then obviously with Jaron Conley is another issue. I just can't see them without being completely cleared, especially Conley. If he ends up being cleared after the fact, you're going to feel bad. But you put yourself in a situation where even though you might not have done anything, you're still kind of around it. So what are you doing around that stuff?
I loved your tweet the
stay
other day.
home, man.
5 days.
Seriously,
stay home.
I mean, it's so easy not to mess up. Yet guys are finding ways to do it.
Is that the problem with Conley? Is the timing? We saw it a couple years ago with Lyle Collins, who was a short-fire first-round pick, had nothing to do with an incident in Louisiana, but the timing, it was so close to the draft, nobody could take it.
I don't know any case that was able to be investigated and then actually cleared in 2 or 3 days. It takes months, years sometimes for these things. So it's just not, from a timing standpoint, it's awful. If he does become someone that's innocent, it's obviously crushing. But again, what are you doing? Where are you at? Knowing what's going on the next couple of days. Why put yourself in a position? That's the mistake. So you can even judge him on putting himself in that, that situation.
If Cleveland should take.
Number one, well, Cleveland should take Myles Garrett, number one. I think they should, if they want a quarterback, potentially trade up. And I think, it should be Deshaun Watson. I'm not a Trubisky embracer. I think there's just not enough information on him. Watson is a guy that has won games against real talent over multiple years. He's skilled. He it reminds me of, I keep looking at him, I'm thinking, I heard Donovan was on First Take today, and I was just thinking, man, he kind of reminds me of Donovan a little bit. His game, he's a mobile guy, but yet he's a pocket guy. He can move around and get you some yards, but I think he can, go into the right spot, the right situation, he'd be productive. Unfortunately, guys, when you're drafted high as a quarterback, most times you're going to a bad team with some losing, and, Cleveland is where players go and die. You go make your money, but you ain't winning games out there. So, unfortunately, I love Hugh Jackson. I'm a huge Hugh Jackson fan, but they didn't look good last year, and I can't imagine them making a quick turnaround this year.
Now, the skinny in Cleveland, Anthony, to me, and what I've heard, is that Jimmy Haslam is involved. Because if you rewind 365 days, Cleveland was sitting at number 2. Sashi Brown is saying to Jimmy Haslam, I don't think Carson Wentz is going to be a top 20 quarterback.
No, I know they were saying. I know Carson Wentz is not. That's how firm they believe in that.
Exactly. And then you fast forward, and they're saying this class all of a sudden isn't as good as last year's class. So if you're the owner and saying, I want a quarterback, is it a possibility he puts his foot down and says, take Trubisky?
Yeah, there's a possibility they could take him at 1, which I doubt. But, anything's possible with the draft. I think we were all kind of surprised a few years ago when Bortles went at 3 with Jacksonville when we thought he was maybe a top 15 guy. But, look, Haslam seems to have his voice in. Is the owner? You pay guys to do their jobs, but it seemed like taking Johnny Manziel was something he wanted to do internally. That didn't work out for him. I would say none of these quarterbacks are ready to step on the field to have any success right now, especially the teams that need quarterbacks are just not in a circumstance to win football games. I think the guys that are going to end up being lucky are some of those bottom first-round picks. It's kind of worth – I kind of look at it like this, and I was talking to Hasselbeck last night. He was kind of watching a lot of these guys, and he was telling me, he's like, look, would you rather pay a bottom-end $14, $15 million for guys like Fitzpatrick, Cutler, what's his name?
Talking about
Sam Bradford, or would you go invest $3 to $4 million a year on a guy that you can develop, build, and get him on the lower end of the first round? The first round isn't what it used to be. It's not guaranteed $65 million, all this stuff. The numbers are down. So for teams to go early on a quarterback, to me, although we think first round quarterbacks is silly to put these guys in the first round, it's not completely doesn't make that much sense not to do it, because they're not investing too much in these guys, and there's a lot of talent in this draft this year.
All right, Anthony Becht with us. So what was more difficult, walking up these steps to get here, or do you remember the intramural game we played on the main floor at WVU? That first couple of minutes running up and down that floor, I thought all 5 of us were going to fall down. I thought we were going to drop.
Well, I remember that game vividly because I had 4 fouls in the first half. This is
an intramural game, by the way.
Right. This is the Elite 8. Okay,
Yeah.
we played a bunch of teachers,
Oh, boy.
at the university, and
And
they
they
just
whipped
abused
us.
us. They just rolled us, and we thought, I was a big bad football player. We had a couple young guns, some of the guys, that led the charge outside in the social scene, like Mike Gill and some of our buddies.
He was social?
He had the nice he had the nice knockdown three from the outside, a little bit of a Bob Cousy kind of a shot, it just popped in. But
Did he dribble like Bob Cousy? Only right hand, never left
yeah,
hand.
he would never pass. I know that. He was all dribble and shoot, I'd be open down low, putting my hand up, but that's probably one of the reasons why we got spanked that game.
Three's more than two, man, right? Three's
You're right.
more than two.
You're right.
Oh,
If you
that's
make
great.
them, you make them. But I'll tell you, this is a great setup. I mean, this is phenomenal. The build out, you heard about it, but you're watching everything, how it got put together. There's no dollar that's been saved doing this. I mean, this is just extreme, and I think it's going to be awesome. It's already getting crazy downtown. I've been here since Tuesday, and this whole draft experience is phenomenal. So it's great for the city of Philadelphia. And apparently, I think whoever thought of moving this to all the different cities is obviously a marketing genius, because it's definitely got a lot of hype.
Yep, and I know a lot of people want in for next year now. We'll see
They
if,
all want it.
Right
Kansas
now.
City, I think, or somebody wants it. These
Real
smaller market teams want to bring it out.
I had heard they're going to talk about
It's like a
doing
mini
it in
Super Bowl.
multiple locations all on the same day, where you have different draft experiences going on in all of the cities.
Major cities. So
That'd be a good marketing thing to do.
I'm sure somebody's already ahead.
All
of
right,
that.
all right.
Maybe they should hire you. I don't know.
Sports Bets Live here in Philly. Anthony Becht, of course, Philly guy. Now you even got the Rays hat on. You went full Tampa.
I felt I had to bring something up to the table. I mean, I have a general interest in the Bucks, in the Jets, and of course Philadelphia, because I cover them a little bit, during the season. So I'm always have some interest in what's going on. But I think there's going to be some surprise. I mean, the first round obviously is a round that could be a lot of different things, a lot of different ways. How some of these linemen going to fall. I mean, I'm not real high on a lot of these guys, but some could go higher than others. So defensive ends, running backs, and quarterbacks are the big stories tonight. Where do they fall, and how will they land?
Real quick, Mike McCagnon, your old team, Jets, where are they going at number 6?
Man,
they hold a big key.
They do. I would trade that pick and go get some more. They need a lot of help. I mean, it's not just one guy, and it's definitely not a quarterback, or at least a quarterback in this draft that's going to make a difference. They could probably get a solid quarterback moving forward, but just because you think you like a guy, don't force it at 6. I just don't see it. I don't know what they're going to do. I mean, I know McCown's there, and it's definitely a hanging Band-Aid, not a Band-Aid. And he's a great guy, great kid, great long career, but he's definitely not a guy you can lean on. So they got some work to do, not just at the quarterback position, but the weapons, receivers, backs, linemen. They lost a lot of bodies on the offensive side.